three big events that have dramatically shaken America in September. We were warned to prepare ourselves as we entered September, and this month was definitely a critical turning point. As we recorded this podcast, some of history's greatest wildfires continue to rage on the West Coast, with political activists preparing for chaos in Washington, D.C. for weeks as Republicans try to derail their attempt to fill Ruth Bader Ginsburg's vacant seat as the Supreme Court. Protesters from all over the country are taking the streets full of anger because of the newly announced verdict in the Breonna Taylor trial. This entire year has been a nightmare, and it certainly seems that things will increase even more in the coming months. Let's start by talking about unprecedented forest fires on the West Coast. Right now, the vast expanses of California, Oregon, and Washington look like something straight out of a post-apocalyptic horror novel. All communities were completely wiped off the map and millions of acres were burned. Yes, there are uncontrollable fires every year, but we have never seen such a thing. In fact, we have seen 5 of the 6 largest wildfires in California's recorded history in the past 2 months. The staggering statistics keep piling up for California's wildfire season. August and September account for 5 of the 6 biggest fires in nearly 90 years of recorded history for the state. The destructive Creek Fire that continues to burn in Fresno County grew about 3,000 acres between Monday and Tuesday for a new total of 283,724 acres, leapfrogging the 2017 Thomas Fire for the number 6 spot. According to CAL FIRE records, it is 30% contained. It was hoped that the cold weather would mean that the worst was left behind, but instead, the authorities warn that another heat dome will soon cover most of the West Coast by early October. Thousands of firefighters struggling to contain dozens of blazes from California to Washington need a break in the weather to help them get the upper hand. But while temperatures have returned to near average after a blistering heat wave in the mid-August and another record-shattering heat episode this month, the weather is poised to tip decidedly in the fire's favor. A large area of high pressure, or a heat dome, is projected to build across the west at the same time as a large dip, although in the jet stream delivers cold air to the Midwest and East beginning this weekend and continuing into early October. So this means that the worst wildfire season in California history could soon get worse. Meanwhile, a different type of fire broke out on the East Coast. The sudden death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg has witnessed a war in Washington for ages. No member of the Supreme Court has been as popular on the left as Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and liberal activists are absolutely embarrassed that President Trump has the opportunity to fill his seat. Trump is expected to announce his candidate on Saturday and said he will be a woman. At this point, a choice seems to be made between Amy Coney Barrett and Barbara Lagoa. Mitch McConnell and other Republican leaders tell Trump that picking Barrett will be the right choice for the country, but many on the campaign team tell Trump that choosing Lagoa would be the most politically wise choice. It will be very interesting to watch what Trump finally decided to do, and in both cases we should wait for the Democrats to pull all the stops before the election to prevent the seat from being filled. In the middle of the country, a striking legal decision threatens to plunge major cities across the country into a new civil turmoil. BLM activists desperately hope that all 3 police officers involved in the conflict that resulted in the death of Breonna Taylor would be charged with murder. Instead, only 1 officer was charged, and the only thing he was accused of doing wrong was shooting at a neighboring flat. On Wednesday, a Kentucky grand jury indicted 1 of 3 police officers involved in the incident on charges of wanton endangerment for shooting a gun into a neighboring apartment. Former Louisville police officer Brett Hankison is facing 3 felony charges. Jonathan Mattingly and Miles Cosgrove, 2 other officers involved, were not charged. This decision surprised many people, but it eventually came to the way the law was implemented. Quite simply, it was decided that it was right for the police officers to shoot at Taylor's flat because they were fired first. But it likely hinged on what Attorney General Daniel Cameron told reporters Wednesday, Kentucky's rigorous laws on self-defense. Cameron said there were no homicide charges against Sergeant Jonathan Mattingly and Officer Miles Cosgrove, who together fired 18 shots, 6 of which hit Taylor because they were justified in firing after being fired upon. And this makes sense. If I was working as a cop and someone shoots at me, I would definitely have responded. At this point, however, no explanation of legal issues will alleviate the pain and anger we are experiencing throughout the country. Immediately after the verdict was announced, protesters started taking to the streets, and soon things got violent. 2 police officers have already been shot, and the video footage of gunfire posted online is absolutely creepy. What we witnessed must upset us all because our society is literally falling to pieces before our eyes, and seeing Americans fighting Americans should break our hearts. And it turns out that someone predicted things would go crazy and parked a U-Haul where protesters could find it. A parked U-Haul was waiting for the crowd up the street. It contained supplies such as signs, shields, water, etc. I'm not sure how people knew what it contained. What a wild moon it has been already, and I expect it to get even wilder. Trump's fight to stop the Supreme Court candidate will begin at high speed this weekend, and bitter disappointment with the Breonna Taylor decision will trigger protests in the cities across the country for some time. I believe we are entering a period of permanent internal turmoil in this country, and whoever wins the election in November will be true. But of course, if the fight over the outcome of the upcoming presidential election lasts from 3 November to weeks or even months, that will make things worse. I have such a bad feeling about what's future, and so many others that I feel the same way. So we must continue to support ourselves, because what we are already going through is just a tip of the iceberg. Most of the idea, comment, information, and criticism containing in these videos have been created by Daily News Report. Before making any important investment decision, use the information contained in these videos as a starting point for conducting your own research. If you make any investment or legal decision, it is advised to consult an expert before making this decision.